have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and rolla with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait to next year where we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how can you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers Vipercast.
Hello and welcome to Shark Week. The Dynasty Vipers Vipercast, presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group. Hey, as always, I am joined by Major and Tera, but on today's show, we have one of the biggest nerds in all of fantasy football. We have the one and only Garrett Price. How you doing, Garrett?
Man, I even get applause, man. See, usually on my show they boo me. So
we got some there for you too if you need it.
Garrett, don't worry about that. Trust me, I've heard that. It comes out at least 4, 5, 6 times a show whenever I'm on. So
I feel more at home now. We're good to go.
Hey, we're all about making people feel comfortable here, aren't we, Major?
Yeah. I don't know where we're going with that, but I'm always uncomfortable. Like now.
And that is what I strive for each and every week. So Tera, I think everyone here has kind of wrapped up their SFB drafts right now. I think Major, I think you were one
Mine
of the
just ended like 5 minutes ago. Mine just wrapped up.
So I'm going to go around here real quick before we get into the show there. Major, how do you feel about your team now that it's officially wrapped up? It can't be any worse than last year's Trevor Lawrence and whoever else you had a quarterback, is it?
Yeah, I had Trevor and Wentz. So this year I have who do I have? I don't know. I really didn't. Last year I had like charts and diaphragm. It looked like I was in the Matrix. I had all this stuff, or like Minority Report. I was pulling stuff out the air. This year I just kind of had fun and went with it, and we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what my team looks like right now. I haven't even really looked at the final product. Maybe go to Tera and then come back.
Well, I'm going to Tera, but I'm not coming back. So Tera, how are you feeling about your team?
Yeah, I'm feeling good about my team. I kind of, unlike Major, who should know since his draft literally ended, mine ended like well over a week ago, so I got to refresh my memory a little bit. But yeah, I like my team. I went with a couple of kind of mid-round, high upside guys who, if they pay off, like Terry McLaurin, Rashad Bateman, if they pay off at the position, I can have a big advantage with those as my wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 guys. So I was trying to go with the team that has some stability. I'm not going off the rails, but also has enough upside to where if I get into the playoffs, I can be a little bit different to be able to push myself to a victory. So I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, I'm feeling you there because we basically wrapped up our draft the day before it actually started. We did ours over on the Series XM there with the Metropolitan Division, and it was, okay, here we go, 30-second clock, go, and we got the whole draft done in one sitting there. So I haven't looked at my roster since we did that, and I already know. I always have a feeling when I like my teams after drafts, typically they turn out to be not very good. And if I absolutely hate my team, chances are they're going to do pretty good. Now, Garrett, how about your team? Who are you kind of feeling right now?
Yeah, I was pretty happy with how things turned out. I somehow managed to get Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers in the first 2 rounds. So feel pretty good about how the quarterback position played out. Got some upside running backs like Barkley and ETN. The receiver room is pretty solid. CeeDee Lamb, DJ Moore, Drake London. So I like how things turned out. I feel pretty good about the squad.
So that's interesting there. The last one you brought up, Drake London.
Yeah.
So we're going to probably talk about him in just a second here, or we can go right to him because when we're looking at these drafts, I know SFB, it's a redraft league. It's not a dynasty startup. But if we're looking at superflex dynasty startup leagues, that's kind of where we're going with on the show here today. Who are some of your do not draft players right now?
Yeah, it's funny. I did a video recently on it, and you picked up on it. Drake London was one of the guys on my do not draft list, and typically in a dynasty league, I'm all about taking rookies. Like I love taking rookies. I spend way too much time scouting all of these players. I do Devy leagues as well, so I like fall in love with these players like years before, and I'm all about it typically. But that being said, Sleeper's ADP of Drake London right now is wide receiver 13. So like the expectation of Drake London is he is a wide receiver 1. And to be able to produce a wide receiver 1 season as more than likely the second option, because we know Kyle Pitts is probably going to be the main option, with a quarterback like Marcus Mariota, I feel like there's probably some disappointment set up there. And although typically you don't get second-year wide receivers cheaper, I think you might actually be able to get him cheaper next year if he doesn't put up 12 to 1,300 yards and, 6 to 8 to 10 touchdowns. Like if he doesn't have a really good rookie season, chances are we're going to see that price tag maybe a hair cheaper next year than we are this year. So just the wide receiver 13 is just too expensive for me at this point. So I'm just not really willing to take him in those dynasty startups.
That Drake London situation is very interesting because they got themselves a youngish quarterback there in Desmond Ridder, but the Falcons could play themselves into the Bryce Young, CJ Stroud conversation come next year. So you could be entering next year with Drake London, with Ridder, or you could possibly tying him with Stroud and Bryce Young there, which would be great for Dynasty, but except we just don't know what's going to happen there. Kind of like these two next running backs on your list. So give me 2 running backs here that you are not drafting at their current ADPs.
Yeah, Najee Harris for Dynasty leagues. I'm not currently able to take him because in Superflex leagues, I really want to get those quarterbacks. I mean, it's a tough thing to acquire after your draft. If you try to trade for a quarterback that's anywhere sniffing the top 15, all of a sudden you're talking about like multiple firsts and, giving up players you really like. It's really hard to acquire them after the draft. And as much as I like Najee Harris, and I think he's a fine football player, nothing really helped him this offseason. They did nothing to address that offensive line, which was one of the biggest contention points for that team last year. Ben Roethlisberger, who had the quickest release out of any quarterback last year, he got rid of the ball quicker than anybody else, also targeted the running back more than anybody else last year, is now gone. They have a youngster in Kenny Pickett who is probably more likely to look to throw it downfield to guys like Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson. So I don't know that we're going to get nearly as many dump offs. And Najee Harris led the league at the running back position in receptions last year. So that number normalizes. It could be difficult for him to be able to produce quite at the same level that he did in the previous season. But at the end of the day, for me, for Dynasty, and I was looking at all of those from a Dynasty perspective, all of these guys I'm talking about, but I can't take a running back in the first round. That shelf life is so short. Give me, even if I'm not going to go quarterback, give me Kyle Pitts, give me Justin Jefferson, give me Jamar Chase, somebody like that over a guy like Najee Harris.
Yeah, I kind of feel that there a little bit too, because we're seeing that workload already add up for him. I think he had something like 381 touches. I mean, the record was back in like 1984. Wilder there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he had like 452 touches in a single season, which is absolutely insane right now. Major, as a former junior college running back, 450 carries, 450 touches is a lot to handle. So maybe Washington's feeling, you know what, Antonio Gibson, we're probably not want to give you that many touches because we don't want to wear you down. Is he also on that do not draft list?
He is on my do not draft list as well. People are starting to wise up, so it's dropped a little bit since I've done the video. But for a while, he was being taken right around even after the NFL draft. He was still taken right around that running back 12 to 14 range. Had of guys like Cam Akers, ETN, different players like that, and it's tough to be able to trust him. Even though I do still think he's going to get a decent amount of touches in total. Like if just counting numbers, I still think he could get 12 to 15 carries a game. But the problem is he's probably lost most of the valuable touches. When I say that, I'm talking about receptions, because they brought back J.D. McKissick after thinking he had left and gone to Buffalo. He came back. So we know that he's not going to get a ton of third down work. And then they brought in Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson's a really good goal line back. And Antonio Gibson last year was towards the upper end as far as red zone touches. That was part of what made him more valuable. You bring in a 230-pounder like Brian Robinson, and you use third-round draft capital to do it. That probably spells him for short yardage and red zone situations. So even if he does well and he gets 12 carries for 80 yards, that's only 8 points. That doesn't help you nearly as much as a guy that might only get 40 yards, but he gets, work around the goal line and he gets receptions. So I can't touch Antonio Gibson right now.
And that's a shame because Gibson's basically put together 2 consecutive 1,000-yard scrimmage seasons, 20-plus touchdowns in just 2 years there. Now, before we get to your fourth player, I'm going to turn the mic over to Major that'll give you his 2 do-not-draft players and just kind of get your thoughts on those 2 guys there, Garrett.
Yeah, so I just went, I'm going to go hard or go home, and I'm going to go with Josh Allen. We all know quarterbacks, the points for quarterbacks are just so tight. You can get a good quarterback later on in most drafts, and Josh Allen's going ahead of Patrick Mahomes, like the golden child. He's going ahead of Lamar Jackson, the guy who could run the rock. He's going ahead of Justin Herbert, who's coming on. So I don't know. I feel like it's a lot of hype built into the Josh Allen stuff here. My second one, I'm going with Austin Ekeler. I love him because he's a fantasy guy. He loves fantasy, but he has 500 plus rushing yards in 4 years. That's a lot of yards, and that's not even including his receptions. So he's touched the ball a lot, and I love his running style. He's a hard runner. Sometimes I think he's too hard of a runner. He doesn't have any finesse. He doesn't make you miss at all. He's running right into you. So he has a lot of poundage going on that body. I think he's 27 this year, going on 28. And we all know that's the magic number for running back. So, although I like Austin, the guy, I think just the usage, I think is a bit much at this point. What you think about that?
Yeah. As far as I go, I'm with you on Austin Ekeler. We saw really odd usage. I shouldn't say odd because they had some injuries and stuff in the backfield last year, but he had one of the highest touchdown totals that we've ever seen out of him. And touchdowns can be really fluky, especially when they brought in a player like Isaiah Spiller. That's somebody that they've been trying to find that guy ever since Melvin Gordon's been gone, to spell him in situations. They tried with Justin Jackson, tried with Larry Roundtree. They tried with, they had another guy. They've had 3 or 4.
Justin Jackson.
Joshua Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly was the other one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So they've had 3 or 4 of these 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys that they've tried to plug in. Hasn't worked yet. The most talented of the bunch so far is definitely Isaiah Spiller. I think we're going to see him be used in those situations. And if he's not rushing for 12 touchdowns like he did last year, that takes him from being, a top 3 RB, maybe back into that RB 8, 9, 10 range. And a guy that's you mentioned it, 27 years old, we're not expecting that to improve. We're only expecting him to be a decreasing asset. So totally get you there. Josh Allen, I'm on the fence with. I get it. He's the number 1 over. I mean, I'm literally in a startup right now. He went number 1 overall. So there's really nowhere for him to go but down. It's because he's the best right now. He had 2 quarterback 1 seasons in a row. But I'm with you. If it's me, I personally do like taking Mahomes and Herbert over him. But I can understand both sides of the coin. So I'm 100% with you on Ekeler. I'm on the fence with Allen.
Yeah,
I think Tara is disagreeing with you on Ekeler. I can kind of see the
really?
wheels turning of her. Yeah, this may be a shocker.
Me. Oh, whoa, again.
So I feel that I owe Tara a rebuttal on the Ekeler.
You really want to make me argue? I was going to leave it alone.
You were not going to.
I promise. I was going to leave it alone. The thing about Austin Ekeler is the only thing that was actually off pace for something that he hasn't already done before, or something that he was on pace to do in a previous season, was just the rushing touchdowns. Everything else actually lines up to what he has performed before or been on pace for before. So I get the argument with the rushing touchdowns, although my argument there is that there was a regime change. Previously, they never used him as a goal line back, and they weren't particularly good as a team as a whole at the goal line as well from a running perspective. So I think I'm not expecting a massive decrease. I am expecting some regression, but not enough that's going to push him outside of the top 5 mathematically, according to the fantasy points that he had last season. So yeah, I'm not worried about Austin Ekeler being a bust.
And she's wrong again.
I'm not. I did the math.
We'll have to revisit this in 2 to 3 years when this show's number 1 on podcast
Such
charts.
a nerd.
Now Tara.
I did the math.
No,
Who are
I
those
fit
two
in.
players that-
I can be a dynasty nerd.
Hey, there you go.
Ooh, nice. Well played. Job interview. So Tara, who are those two players that you're not drafting here right now?
So the first one for me is CMC. I don't think this one is much of a surprise here for me from a dynasty perspective. I can get behind it from a redraft perspective. I'm not going to do it, but I can get behind why people want to do it because of the upside there. But from a dynasty perspective, I have zero faith that even if he is able to get through it for this season, I don't think it's going to happen again. And if you're drafting him in a startup at the position that he's in right now in terms of his ADP, my worry is that what happens with your first round draft pick and you're sitting there and he actually doesn't, make it through half the season at least again. And the trade value is just going to decrease so much. I mean, you've just lost right off the bat there. So I'm staying away from Christian McCaffrey, especially in Dynasty. And then the other one is it's George Kittle. And I'm a little bit surprised on how close his ADP is to Travis Kelce because I agree with the arguments for Travis Kelce. And George Kittle has fallen right there behind him. And I know that there's an age difference, but there's also a playing style difference. There's a history in terms of how much of the season he makes it through, injury history and whatnot, wear and tear on his body. And he's also got an unknown situation where Travis Kelce, he is in a known situation with his quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. We know they're tied together. We don't know exactly what the outcome is going to be between George Kittle and Trey Lance. We don't know how much pass volume is going to be pushing through that offense. We don't know how much is going to be going specifically towards Kittle versus Deebo Samuel. If Brandon Ayuk can pull through, he had a strong finish towards the end of the season. So there's just a lot of unknowns for me in terms of taking George Kittle that high for a startup.
I like how you mentioned George Kittle. So before I turn the mic over to Garrett here, actually I'm going to turn it over right away. Garrett, I'm going to ask you your opinion on George Kittle versus Travis Kelce as do not draft players.
Yeah, I'm probably not drafting either one. Travis Kelce was on my do not draft list. Currently, superflex startups right around the turn of the second and third round there, and it's not because Travis Kelce isn't fantastic. I mean, he was RB1, tight end one, literally tight end one overall for 5 straight seasons. This year, he was finally dethroned by Mark Andrews, who was the tight end one overall. But part of it is he's now in his age 33 season, and what he's already done is unprecedented. So, I mean, it's definitely possible that he could continue, but for how long? And when you're using a second or third round startup pick, you want a player that you're going to be able to have for more than 2 at max, maybe 3 seasons. But I mean, we're looking at him at age 36 there. I don't know that he's still going to be able to produce as a top 3 tight end at age 36. It would be completely unheard of. So, when we're looking at that type of draft capital, I would much rather pivot to another position, or even if we're going to stick at the same position, I would rather wait a round or two, take somebody that has upside, maybe not as safe as Travis Kelce is, that has upside but can do it for so much longer. If you really want the production now, trade up a half a round or so and take Mark Andrews. If you're wanting that production right now, I just can't get behind taking a player that's that old, that late. And going back to George Kittle, I can understand the argument. We've seen a lot of injuries over and over and over, and part of it's due to his play style. I mean, George Kittle is a physical freak, and I love watching him play. But that does lend itself to getting a little bit banged up here and there. And one of the best abilities is availability, and he just hasn't had that over the years. And so while I'm not as far off of him as I am Kelce, I'm more than fine skipping him, going and taking some upside players that I think might give me a little bit more longevity and a little bit more health.
Well, before we head into the commercial break, 2 more players that I got on my list. One actually pains me. I know Major's going to totally disagree with this one right off the get-go. So I want to get you, Garrett, to kind of see if you can see my side of it all here. Cam Akers right now, RB14 for Dynasty startups, overall player 39. You're likely investing a third-round draft pick in a player that we do not know what he's going to be like when he comes back. Prior to that Achilles rupture, he was averaging 4 yards per carry. When he came back, 2.2 yards per carry. Could he get back up to 4? Absolutely, he could. But we don't know. We don't have anything in stone about how a player is going to recover from an Achilles injury. So for me, I'm out at that current ADP.
Yeah, I haven't been the biggest Cam Akers supporter, so I'm sorry, man. Like
I had to
I
boo you again.
I didn't get set up for success on this one because I do have a history of kind of being out on Cam Akers. Look, I remember as a draft pick, he was like the biggest boomer bust player for me because you saw like the physical abilities were there, but as far as like being able, like that offensive line was horrific, but it set him up for some bad habits. I don't think he had the best vision. He didn't always make the best decisions at the second level. So like I was like, I love like the physical, like he looks like a running back that I would like make on Madden, like a creative player. Like I like him, but there was just like some of those like a little nuances that I was concerned about. And they haven't necessarily been cleaned up great. We've seen like flashes, like a game or two here and there. There was like one or two primetime games too, which I think really helped elevate his view in the public. But once you add in that Achilles injury and already some of the concerns I had just with him as a player before that, I'm probably going to be out. I think that there's some players at a similar ADP that I would rather have and I'd rather bank on, especially you mentioned it. I still don't know that he can come back all the way. Like it was so encouraging to see him back in the playoffs, but none of those games were that good. So
he was playing injured though. He came back the same year. That's unheard
which is incredible.
Of.
It's incredible. And I hope it works because I'm banking on it working for my boy James Robinson because I love him. So I hope it works out like in general. But until I see it, it's really tough to invest that capital because in those first 4 rounds of a startup, this is just kind of my personal philosophy. In those first 4 rounds, I'm playing it like I can't miss because when you miss in those first 4 rounds, especially if you miss on 2 of those guys, you set yourself back so far. Then once I'm in like the 5th round or later, I'm all about taking up. Like, give me all the upside in the world then. But on those cornerstone pieces, I can't miss. And there's just too many yellowish, orangish, reddish flags at this point with Cam Akers for me, man.
Yeah, good thing I picked him up in the 5th round in the Scott Fishbowl. Great.
Hey, there you go.
Right, you said 4, right?
Hey, 5th round, I'm cool with. 5th round, I'm cool with.
Yeah, and then another player right in that same round there, right around that same area is Tyreek Hill. He's going off as the 34th player, wide receiver 12. He's not even the best receiver, in my opinion, on his team. I'm all team Jalen Waddle here all the time. Give me all the smoke. I got all the gas for Jalen Waddle. Tyreek Hill just doesn't do it quite for me the same there. So, Sharks and Penguins, they love each other, right? They got a little bit of a relationship. Tyreek Hill's a cheetah. We don't want none of those land mammals on our side.
I'm okay with Tyreek. Like I'm not like I love Waddle too. I think they're both fantastic. If I'm going to be out on one, I'm going to be out on the other because if I'm going to be out, which I'm not, but if I'm going to be out, it's going to be because I have questions about Tua more so than I have questions about either one of those players. But I think Tua is good enough, accurate enough to get it done. I think we're going to see improvement from that offense. I think that they've done a good job building that offensive line. Like I really believe in McDaniels to get that offense and the pieces like on a chessboard where they need to be. So I'm in on both guys. I know that depreciates both of their value a little bit, but I like both players. So I'm not quite out on Tyreek yet.
I mean, Tua's the greatest quarterback ever, according to Tyreek. Like, he's the greatest quarterback.
He's loving it. He's dropping F-bombs on live TV for him.
Yeah, I love that part.
I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, Tua's an accurate quarterback. And on this show, this is a Team Tua type show here. So, I mean, we all got Tua really high in our rankings here. We all believe in Tua and his ability. So, I mean, you can't argue the numbers. The numbers are the numbers.
It's good to be accurate when you're – I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, we talk about completion rate, completion percentages, and Tua's right up there with the best in the league. So give him another weapon. I mean, this offense, he doesn't have to throw 40-yard bombs to score touchdowns. He can dump them off 4 yards and watch them go.
I'm like, it's great. It's easy to be accurate when you're throwing like check downs and quick slants, So, I'll give that to him.
True.
Well, before we head off to the next part of the show here, I just want to kind of give a shout out here to Garrett here at dynastynerds.com. Just let the people know what you guys got going on there as we head into we're in training camp right now. That means the season is just right there. And I know you guys over at Dynasty Nerds have all kinds of fantastic tools to help fantasy managers gain that little bit of an edge.
Yeah, we're always cooking, we're always working. We're actually getting close to the release of our GM 2.0, which is gonna clean up some features, add some new features, some new tools. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, we've got all kinds of stuff over on the website. Anything from our film room. So if you're a guy that's like more of a film grinder, you want to get your eyes on the rookies and break down their tape. That's what I enjoy doing personally. So we've got you there. We cut up all the games into 5, 6, 7 minutes, so you just get their snaps from every single game that we can get our hands on, and a lot of them are all 22, which is especially for me with running backs to really be able to evaluate their vision and stuff. You got to have the all 22, or you just really can't tell. Like you just really can't tell without it. We have the GM tool, so you can go in there, plug your teams in. If you're like a degenerate like me and you got like 19 teams, you can go and plug your teams in, and it'll tell you right away on a snapshot what teams in your league have good running backs, which ones have good receivers, who's good trade targets. We got the trade calculator there. All kind like I could spend way too long talking about all this, but go in, check it out. You won't regret it.
That's one of my go-to sites for real.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Well, with that all being said, hey, we're going to move this conversation on to behind the grind here in just a second. We're going to have a little bit of football and faith brought up in the next segment, so you're not going to miss that. So stay tuned. We'll catch you a little bit later.